You ever notice how fast we turn God into a suspect, especially when life goes sideways on us? Our brain becomes a professional narrator saying, "Ah, God must be against me," or "God did this to me." And then we act like that's true. We pray with one eye open, waiting for the next heavenly shoe to drop. And God becomes a real easy target for our blame. But James steps in like, "Hey, don't be deceived, brothers, sisters, because if you get God's character wrong, you'll misread everything else." Got it.
I don't want to get God's character wrong.
No, I don't want to either.
My
And
initial
you would,
my initial thought is if we just study God's character and nothing else, our radar is really going to be up with regard to everything else.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing, right? It's like, how do you get God's character wrong? I
Apparently, a
mean,
lot of people do.
well, I mean, apparently we all do from time to time, right? But I mean, you would think that would be such an easy thing to go, well, yeah, I can't misread what God's all about. But yet we do. And, when things just get ugly and things don't work out the way we want and we
Welcome.
get bad news,
Yeah,
the first thing we think of is like, why is God doing this to me? Because, I mean, it's all about me, right?
it's all
So,
yes, it's all about all of us. And I was going to say, welcome to the wonderful world of how many thousands of denominations where everybody's got just a little bit of a twist. So we're looking at James
yep.
1, 16 through 18, and here's what it says. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. I want to say my brothers and sisters. I want to say it that way, but I guess I'll start over. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created.
Yeah, that's so good, right? Like first of all, don't be deceived, which I mean, I think that right there is saying, hey, you're gonna like people like you're gonna have there's gonna be things where you're gonna be deceived, or at least attempt, or people are gonna attempt, or things are gonna attempt to deceive you. So just expect that to happen, but just
Yeah,
don't be deceived, right? And then there's
absolutely.
this other part, and then there's this other part of like every good and perfect gift. So basically, anything that's good and perfect, we know where that comes from. That comes from God. And then there's this little piece that says, we know it comes from God who does not change.
He does not change. So, absolutely, life is confusing, but God is the steady one.
So if it's good and it's perfect, that means it came from Him. And He doesn't change, which means, well, I used to give you good and perfect stuff, but yeah, for you, Bill, I'm gonna try to deceive you this
Yeah.
time.
But when they say life is confusing, I mean you've got so many you've got so many different people that says, well, God is love, so He would never cast this group of people out or that type of person out, because if God is love, then everybody's covered, and that's taking something that's good and perfect, God is love, and really twisting that puppy around.
Yeah, because we as humans, we're not perfect,
Far from it.
you know? So we do things that displeases God. We do things that God doesn't want us to do, but that's not from Him.
Yeah. And I think the key to this passage is God doesn't shift. He doesn't change. You know how the shadow is one way in the morning and the other way in the afternoon? God doesn't
God's always the
cast
same.
God doesn't cast a shadow. You know why? Because God is light. Thought I'd throw
Right.
that in there.
I like that. That'll preach.
That'll preach. And here we are going at it. So
So then it goes on to say then that He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, which means that if we're deceived and we live with wrong thoughts or wrong whatevers and things like that, we can't blame Him, but He gives us this opportunity to say, you can be rebirthed, you can be born again through the word of truth. And you know it's true because I don't change.
Does not change.
So it's kind of given us this little outline like, hey, there's going to be times in your life that things are going to or people are going to try to deceive you, but don't let that happen because that's not from God because that's not perfect and good.
Right.
And then you know it's not from him and because it's not perfect and good, first of all, and second, he doesn't change. So here's your way out. I don't like to use it that way, so I use it in quotes. Here's your way out of that, right? Is like take the word of truth and be born again in that. So I guess basically the bottom line to all this, Bill, is uh, God's not your scapegoat.
Yeah, and we want to justify all of our actions by God, not just using him as a scapegoat, but using him as a justification platform.
Yes, we do.
If that kind of makes sense, a justification platform.
Yeah,
But
which means, and we do that, right? It's because I want to do this thing. So therefore, how do I make it fit into like this must be from God? And we know that, we know that's not true. So
right.
what's James really telling us with all this?
Well, first of all, I think anchor to God's character, not our circumstances,
Mm,
because we want to keep talking about our circumstances and oh my goodness and I don't get this God. I think of Job. I think of others in the Old Testament where they just went through so much stuff, even in the New Testament, where believers went through so much stuff, and they had to learn how to anchor to God's character. You kind of wonder why Moses was given 2 tablets of stone and 10 commandments, because it really became an anchor moving forward, an anchor of God's character.
and I
And
think
and,
so.
and what happened? With that example, when Moses comes down, what did he find? He found an entire nation so blown by the wind with zero anchor that they're making their own gods and
They're
all
making
over
their own
again, and
idols.
making their own
Yeah,
stuff all over again. And Moses says, "No, I got the anchor right here."
yeah, I love that. That's good. And like so, kind of along with that is this idea is like if we anchor to God's character, which is every good and perfect thing comes from Him, and He does not change. So that's the anchor. That's the character.
Right?
Uh, but then James gives us this warning, like don't be deceived. That's a warning to say you're you're going to be things are going to happen and you're going to be deceived if you allow yourself to be deceived, so don't. And knowing that however you're feeling, that's real. Like we can't shy away from our feelings, but our feelings aren't always accurate either. So we have to make sure that we go back to that anchor. And then I think the next step then is like how do we practice gratitude um, through all of that.
Yeah. The idea of resistance training. Uh, I don't pretend to be one that exercises on a regular basis. Uh, that's why you only see me from about here up. Another story. But resistance training is you're pushing against something that is made to resist.
Hmm.
Resistance bands, or whatever the case may be. And when you talk about practicing gratitude as resistance training, what are we resisting against? We're resisting against that culture that wants to twist and bend and justify evil behavior
We're
in
resisting against the deception, right?
yeah. Yeah, we're
That
resisting.
deception that James is warning us against. That gratitude is that resistance against being deceived.
Right. It's the idea of you're not letting pain write your theology.
Mm, I like that.
Right.
Um, y- I mean, people will bring up things, like you mentioned Job, right? And you look at all the horrible things that happened to Job, and people are like, well, God did this to Job to test him. God didn't do that to Job. God allowed it to happen to Job, but He didn't do it to Job because if He did it to Job, that wouldn't be good and perfect.
Right. God didn't do those. God is not going to do that. God is steady.
Yeah.
He's the anchor. And whenever we think about going against that, then we know it's not right.
Yeah.
You know?
Which I think that leads to kind of this third piece too, is that God's not going to tempt you. He's going to transform you,
Yes.
right? So he might allow temptation to happen, but he's not going to be the tempter.
And that's where this example comes in from Bruce Almighty. The movie Bruce
Mm,
Almighty, right?
yeah.
God doesn't tempt you, he transforms you. So there's a scene in Bruce Almighty where Morgan Freeman is the actor playing God because he has a voice. And the wife of Evan, she's just frustrated. She's in a restaurant and Morgan Freeman character being God is a waiter, which is, I think is really cool because God just serves. He just likes to
Right.
serve. And they get into a discussion, and then the God character says this. He says, "Let me ask you something. If someone prays for patience, do you think God gives them patience, or does He give them the opportunity to be patient? If
Mm.
he prayed for courage, does God give him courage, or does He give him opportunities to be courageous? If someone prayed for the family to be closer, do you think God zaps them with warm, fuzzy feelings, or does He give them opportunity to love each other?"
Yeah, that's really good.
And
That
there,
is really good. Which is
there's where the transformation comes in.
comes
God isn't
so
tempting us, He's transforming us. He's giving us opportunity to be transformed.
yeah.
And part of me says, God, I've had enough transformation for this week. Can you just lay off for a while? And another part of me says, yeah, transform me some more.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
in the middle of all that is that idea that God does not shift like a shadow.
right. And I think that's the key, right? Is that if God is good, we know we can trust him. Even in the pain, even in the turmoil, even in the frustration, even in all the stuff that's going on, we know we can still trust him. And it kind of goes back to something we talked about in an earlier episode with James, and that is like when those things happen, kind of consider that a good thing. Like yeah, it kind of sucks in the minute or in the moment, but on the other side of it is that transformation that you're
Yeah,
talking about.
you're going through the tunnel, and there is a light. There's always a light
Yep.
where God is concerned.
How do we wrap this up?
We wrap it up by saying God doesn't change. Trust Him in that regard. What else can you say? That's
I
Jamie.
think that's Bill, or that's Bill. There's Bill.